I first got interested in this fruit over 20 years ago when I first got to this island. A farmer from Papaya Farms Road down in Kapoho was the first one to introduce me to it, and from the first taste, I was hooked. The Abiu, also known as Puteria caimito, is a tropical fruit native to Brazil. It grows great in Hawai'i on the windward sides of the island from sea level up to 1,000 feet. It loves the heat, good soil, and moisture. But somehow I've gone away with growing it here in my rocky homestead in Pahoa. This tree behind me was one that I started from seed over 15 years ago. It took 7 years to fruit, and it took 15 years to get to this size here, even though I pruned it a few times. Now, a lot of people believe that you need to graft these trees in order to get good fruit, but I don't find that to be true. Every grafted variety that I've ever tasted has been a disappointment. I've either found them to not be very sweet, or they've had worms in them almost every time. I've never found a worm in my seedling Abius, and I think they taste delicious. So I'm going to stick with growing seedlings on my property. But if you are looking for grafted varieties, I've heard of some called Z1, Z2, the Cape Oasis, and the Redondo. There's a few varieties out there, but the trick is finding them. And I'm a fan of growing this tree by seed anyways. And plus, it's a lot tastier that way. So, how do we grow this tree from seed? Well, it's pretty simple actually. First, you have to harvest a few of them and eat them. This part is delicious. Just make sure to save the seed. Ambient seeds are known to be what they call recalcitrant seeds, which means you have to plant them within 3 to 5 days of harvesting or they go bad. You can store them in a Ziploc and a wet paper towel for a few days, but don't wait too long. Once you have all of your seeds, it's time to head into the nursery. Go ahead and prepare some potting soil. I like a 50-50 mix of Pro Mix and Black Cinder to help for drainage. Grab your seed and stick it in, twice as deep as it is big. Make sure you label it and set it out for germination. Now this is the part most people get hung up on. They want to see their seeds germinate, but Abius are notoriously slow. It can take up to 2 months before you'll see this first sprout pop through the soil. I sell these seeds on my online Etsy store all the time, which I'll leave a link to down below. And occasionally I get complaints from people who are saying their seeds aren't germinating. But I just tell them to wait 2 months and come back to me then. If they haven't germinated, then we'll talk. But guess what, guys? No one ever comes back because 90% of the time, Abiu seeds will germinate. And it's a glorious day when that Abiu pops through the soil. You know that future abundance is headed your way. Okay, so now when the true leaves appear, I like to fertilize my little Abiu plant. Sometimes I cheat with a slow release fertilizer like Osmocote. Other times I'll fertilize with fish emulsion or compost tea. But I like Osmocote because it ensures you won't have to fertilize every week. And I tend to forget things, so I like that. Abius are one of those plants that don't like being in pots for too long. I've seen plenty of seedlings get stunted in their pots, only to take off once they're planted in the ground. So in about 6 months after your seeds germinate, I like to plant these trees into the ground or get them into larger pots. I like to make sure I have a well-prepared hole. I'll get rid of as many rocks as I can and try to replant with only native soil. Sometimes I'll add a little bone meal in the hole at planting time to encourage strong root growth, but I save stuff like compost or manure to be spread on top after planting in the native soil. I don't want my trees to get too used to being in like a too nice of a home, yeah? So when you dig a hole and you fill it with all this nice good stuff, the roots don't want to reach out and find anything new. They'll stay constricted into that hole. But if you save all that stuff and put it on the top and plant your plant with native soil, the roots will be encouraged to spread out more. So once you got it planted, make sure you add some mulch, water it in, and voila! You have an Abiu tree. And now all you have to do is wait 5 to 7 years for fruit. Isn't this exciting? Now I've noticed a few things about the fruit on Abius throughout the years. The flowers grow all along the branches on second-year wood. And if I prune the tree 1 year, I won't get fruit until 2 years later. But if I prune half the tree 1 year and the other half the next year, I'll be sure to get a steady supply. And if you don't prune, you'll end up with all of the second-year wood 30 feet up in the air, and you'll be unable to harvest. Plus, you'll be making it easier for the birds to get there first. Don't be like me. Keep your trees pruned to a manageable height and stagger that pruning so that you could have more steady harvests. Another thing I've noticed about Abiu is that they need sun and airflow. No sun and they just don't grow. No airflow, and they're covered in this black soot. And I've noticed aphids really like to show up on trees with limited airflow. If you do get aphids or some other pests like that, you can just spray them off with water or a soapy spray solution. But I've never really seen them get too bad. And when that day comes to finally harvest the fruits, count yourself lucky because you're one of the few on this planet that can enjoy this wonderful fruit. When we get too much, we freeze it or add it to smoothies or make Abiu bread. But normally we just eat them straight from the tree. They don't last long enough. And so that's how you grow Abiu, everybody. If you live in the wet tropics, it can be pretty easy. Somewhere else, you might have a tougher time. And if you're looking for trees, I have some currently in stock in my nursery right now. A single tree costs $12, or I have two for $10. And you could also buy the seeds from me on my Etsy store, which, once again, the link is down in the description below. Now, I love making these videos because it gives me an excuse to expand my tree nursery. And if you're interested in starting your own backyard tree nursery, you should check out this video right here because it goes through all the ins and outs of starting your own, including